In terms of different dialects within the language,
Mm-hmm.
like for Arabic, for example, do you guys offer all different dialects or just the modern?
Modern standard is what we're offering now. All right. Back to translation interpretation, just giving a few examples of the types of interpretation. Again, freelance interpretation is the most popular. A lot of our graduates end up being freelance and end up getting contracts, whether they're government contracts or contracts with private organizations to work on specific conferences, projects, etc. And in some cases, I was speaking to a recent alum who said, yeah, for 2 weeks I was working with the ambassadors from Korea doing a tour of the United States, and I was just at their side the entire time, working on interpreting all their meetings. So it can be a fairly romantic career. Offer some travel experiences. Translation positions, again, a fair amount of freelance. Then there's these other options as well. All right, and some examples of translation interpretation jobs. And of course, if you haven't found the pattern yet, also an alumni highlight, Xenia, graduated in '07, and she's a staff translator for TTI, which does a lot of different contract work. All right, so to wrap things up, that essentially finished off the different schools that we have on campus. We have research centers on campus, the first being the James Martin Center for Nonproliferation Studies, which is one of the world's leading research centers for nonproliferation issues. Again, a lot of the news items that you'll read about Iran or North Korea come from this research center. So we're very well established and have research centers affiliated with this both in DC and in Kazakhstan. We also have the Center for Asian Studies, and then the business school has a Center for Globalization and Localization of Business Exports. And then we also, in the security field, have Montrep, which is the Monterey Terrorism Research and Education Program. So these aren't just centers for researchers coming to do their work, but they also offer you the opportunity to work within those fields. So you can be hired to do research projects that focus on non-proliferation issues as essentially part of your work study or research assistantship. So that can give you practical skills while you're there on campus. Career planning is a massive aspect of your experience at the Monterey Institute. We have internship programs that are very strong, a lot of connections for that middle summer while you're studying, and also a fairly revolutionary program called IPSS, which is the International Professional Service Semester. And what this is, it's an opportunity for you to spend your final spring semester working as a junior professional anywhere in the world. So again, it could be with the World Trade Organization, World Health Organization, United Nations, and we negotiate these positions to make sure that you're not being an intern that just is making coffee and copies, but instead writing the policy memos that get read up the chain, making presentations, and essentially working as a policy professional. And having 6 months of that type of experience in the real world is hugely beneficial for job placement on the back end. Making yourself a known quantity for employers is quite a benefit. It's very tough to beat. We'll also offer a lot of short-term certificate programs, one example being DPMI, which is a program focused on development. And this is another way for you to reestablish a certain skill set specific to a particular area. So we offer certificate programs in development, the environment, global trade. So if you do want to reestablish a niche for yourself, the certificate programs are a good opportunity. And the Global Alumni Network is pretty amazing. The Monterey Institute isn't a massive school. It's growing, but it does have a pretty broad range of alumni, and they know the school. It's very intimate. I mean, it's pretty similar to going to a Middlebury or a Bowdoin, where if you become part of the Monterey Institute family, they recognize where you're coming from, they'll have a familiarity with you, and help make connections for you in terms of your professional aspirations. So something that the career service folks rely on heavily is that alumni network. Excellent. So this is to kind of wrap things up, talking a little bit about admission requirements. Obviously, for the master's degree program, you'll need a BA from an accredited institution, and we do have a minimum GPA of a 3.0 out of a 4-point scale. We do need to have second language skills. You know, those vary depending on which program you're going into. Translation interpretation, you have to be near native in most cases. For the business and policy school, essentially you need to come in with a minimum of 2 years of undergrad, so 4 semesters, or ready to start at that 300 level. And then the language and educational linguistics, you'll have to be a little bit more advanced, essentially fluent, but not necessarily near native. Test scores, again, as I mentioned, GRE isn't required. However, if your GPA is below our minimum requirement, we do strongly encourage it, and it's pretty tough to get in without a strong GRE score at that point. The GMAT is required for the business school. I can get those scores to you. If anyone's a non-native speaker of English, then we will require, in most cases, the TOEFL or IELTS score to show that your language skills are up to speed. Transcripts, resume, personal statement, and references, all pretty standard in terms of the graduate admission process. And then, of course, there's the application form itself and a small $50 application fee, which again is fairly standard. Deadline is actually rolling for the Monterey Institute, but we do have a merit-based scholarship program where you can, based on your resume and your transcripts, be awarded anywhere from $4,000 to $14,000 or $15,000 per year, so essentially up to half tuition. So if you'd like to be considered for those, all you need to do is submit your application by one of the deadlines, and you'll automatically be reviewed for it. So December 1st, February 1st, and March 15th are the fall deadlines, and then the spring deadline is October 1st. So that about wraps it up. So any other questions? And again, if we want to broaden this out into a broader discussion about grad school applications in general, if that's what you're thinking about, we can certainly do that.
Do you think it's a disadvantage to be on the West Coast? I mean, because a lot of similar schools, I know this is a unique program, but you know, it's like most of this stuff you find on the East Coast, you find in DC. So is that, did you see that as a disadvantage at all, being in this?
I actually get that question a lot while I'm on the road, particularly in Washington, D.C., representing the policy school. And in a lot of ways that you know, does have an impact, you know, on students' decisions. But what we've tried to do is bring as much of DC or the policy world as possible to the policy school, for example. You know, and that starts with the professors. You know, we want to make sure that they're practitioners. We also have implemented a workshop program where, you know, about between 15 and 18 different workshops are offered throughout the semester, and they're weekend workshops. And we'll actually fly in practitioners, you know, from CARE or from USAID, regardless of where they are in the world, and they'll come in, start teaching a class on a particular area, particular subject on a Friday, goes all day Saturday, all day Sunday, probably not the most fun weekend, but it's a way to get specialized training in a particular area and also establish a network. And then experiences like the IPSS program allow students to go out in the field while also, you know, maintaining that academic program.
What about assuming somebody graduates and stays in the U.S., do you see a lot of the graduates who do remain in the U.S. going east, or do you think that people are placing jobs along the west?
It depends. There's, again, with the policy school, there's a pretty major pipeline to DC, and that's probably the largest hub. For business, it does tend to be a little bit more West Coast or international. And then, you know, for the T&I program, you know, you're essentially global at that point, and same with the teaching.